What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Friday, June 27th, 2025, and I have some breaking news to share with you guys. Right now it is 14:43 Eastern Time here in the United States, and we have some major breaking news coming in from the Middle East and from Eastern Europe. So last night we had some encrypted data that was being transmitted on the primary U.S. nuclear war frequency, and it was transmitting all night long. In addition to that, we had some unusual Russian Air Force activity yesterday. There was a large number of Russian doomsday planes and VIP planes airborne, and also a Russian plane flew into Lithuania's and Latvia's airspace, and it was doing a nuclear fallout exercise, practicing collecting air samples after nuking the Baltics. And that was reported by Lee Wheelbarger of KLW World News. So Russia is now actively training to nuke the Baltics. We know that Russia is going to be having a massive exercise in Belarus in September. So potentially Russia could be invading the Baltics this fall. But let me play a sample of this encrypted data for you. So typically when the U.S. transmits data like this on the primary nuclear war frequency, it usually means that something big is about to go down. We also had a presidential doomsday plane airborne yesterday and some other interesting flights the last 2 days that I'll show you in a few minutes here. And we have this billboard that showed up in Israel. Actually, several of these billboards have showed up across the Middle East. And it's talking about an Abraham alliance. And you can see Trump here, the front and center of this alliance. And to the right of him, you have Netanyahu. To the left, the Saudi prince. You have the Egyptian president, the Palestinian leader, Mahmoud Abbas, the Syrian president, the Jordanian prince, and some other leaders of Middle Eastern countries. This is very, very concerning. We know that Trump's biggest fantasy is to create this big Middle East peace deal, and he tried to do it with the Abraham Accords, and I think this time around Trump is going to push that even further. You know, he wants this massive peace deal in the Middle East so he can have the bragging rights that he achieved the ultimate deal. Okay, we know that he loves to make deals. And there was some kind of an emergency exercise at March Air Force Base yesterday morning. And apparently there were shelter-in-place sirens being played over the loudspeaker system. So that is very, very concerning. Not sure why they're doing that. And the U.S. reportedly depleted 20% of its THAAD missile stockpile in the recent Israel-Iran flare-up. And the Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz ordered the Israeli Air Force to develop an air superiority enforcement plan to permanently dominate Iranian airspace. Wow. And Trump said today that he would strike Iran again without any question if it is revealed that Iran has enriched uranium at levels that enable nuclear weapons. And U.S. officials told the New York Times that parts of the Natanz facility were damaged but not destroyed. And U.S. intelligence agencies believe Pakistan is developing an Icbm capable of reaching the continental U.S. Wow. So Pakistan is building nuclear missiles that they can use to strike the U.S. That is absolutely insane. Russia is planning to attack the Zaporizhia direction in the near future, according to the head of the Center for the Study of Occupation, Andrushenko, in Ukraine. There's reports of large-scale movement of enemy equipment, and here you can see a Russian tank on a flatbed truck in southern Ukraine. So it looks like the Russians are going to try to push into the Zaporizhia region deeper than they already have. Okay, so this could be a new phase of the war. We'll have to wait and see. And South Korean intelligence reports are saying that Russia may be planning a massive offensive against Ukraine this summer, potentially with support from North Korea. Approximately 6,000 North Korean soldiers are reportedly being recruited to join the effort. And the leader of Iran emerged from his bunker yesterday and released a pre-recorded address to the Iranian people. Want to read to you some of the things he said. He said that Trump greatly exaggerated what happened. He also said the U.S. hit nuclear sites but couldn't achieve much. Any future aggression against Iran will come at a great cost. Our nuclear sites remain unaffected. Surrender will never happen. Our nation is powerful. The Zionist regime had to learn that attacking Iran comes at a high cost, and it did. So, strong words there from the Ayatollah Khamenei, basically showing defiance against Trump and Israel. And the Iranian foreign minister said that Iran is not Lebanon. Any violation of the ceasefire will be met with an immediate and forceful response. And yesterday, the law in Iran that suspended cooperation with the IAEA came into effect. Trump only attacked 3 facilities in Iran. Okay, there's dozens of nuclear facilities and bunkers in Iran where Iran could have moved this nuclear material to. You have to use some common sense. Do you really think that attacking 3 sites in a country the size of Alaska is going to completely denuclearize them? I don't think so, guys. Those were largely symbolic strikes by Trump. He wanted to show Israel and show the world that he attacked Iran, and now let's make a deal, basically is what it is. He wanted to satisfy the Israeli side and try to get this deal, this big Middle East peace deal, is what he ultimately wants. And in order to get that deal, he's got to satisfy the Israeli side, and he did that by striking Fordow with the big bunker busters, okay? But Iran has so many other facilities like Fordow, like Natanz, that were untouched, okay? And even the Isfahan nuclear site was not hit with bunker busters. They only hit the entrances to the tunnels with Tomahawk missiles, okay? And also, just south of Natanz by just a mile, there's this huge mountain with multiple tunnels, okay? Just a mile down the road from Natanz, okay? Iran had 2 months to prepare and move their uranium because Trump gave them 2 months, okay? So obviously they probably moved a lot of their uranium into that mountain right next to Natanz, okay? And I've showed you guys that on the live streams, okay? If you look at Natanz, just south of Natanz, just a mile south, there's a big mountain ridge, and there's 4 to 6 tunnels there, okay? So, guys, Iran's nuclear material has not been eliminated, and by Trump only doing this limited strike on Iran, it's going to make Iran now clandestinely develop their nuclear program because they banned the IAEA. They banned anyone to come in and inspect what they're doing, and they're going to rapidly build nuclear weapons now, okay? And the U.S. Chief of Staff said that in the days preceding the strikes on Fordow, the Iranians tried to cover the vents with concrete. And the U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the intelligence report was leaked because some want to portray the Iran strike as a failure. The media is chasing scandals, ignoring achievements, and targeting President Trump. And the Jerusalem Post is reporting that Iran may increase its missile arsenal from 2,500 to as many as 10,000 by 2028. Wow, that is a massive number of missiles. And Fox News, citing several federal sources, said U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has detained 130 Iranian nationals across the U.S. in the past week, bringing the total number of Iranian nationals currently in its custody to 670. So they're going after the sleeper cells. And there was some kind of a high-level Russian VIP that arrived in D.C. earlier this week. According to flight tracker data, a Russian special flight squadron plane flew from St. Petersburg to JFK, and then from JFK to D.C., so very unusual. And there's multiple reports coming in of a deeper complex than Fordow in Iran, just south of Natanz, where Iran could have moved uranium before the strikes. So this is what I was just talking about, and they're calling this mountain Pickaxe Mountain, okay? And over the last few years, they have been building these tunnels, okay? And China, Iran, and Russia held a defense ministers' summit in Beijing. Top military officials from all three powers met for high-level strategic talks amid rising global tensions and shifting alliances. Now, what's interesting is Xi Jinping and Putin will not be attending the BRICS summit. That's very, very strange, considering that they are like probably the most powerful people in BRICS, okay? So Xi Jinping and Putin will not be at the BRICS summit. Very strange. And we know that Mexico has been invited to the BRICS summit. And Obama's former DHS secretary sounded the alarm on Iranian sleeper cells, calling it a concern of the highest magnitude. And Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov said the military and political situation in the world is deteriorating and the potential for conflict is dangerously increasing. The Israeli and American strikes on Iranian military facilities and infrastructure constitute a flagrant violation of the UN Charter and international law. The Iranian-Israeli confrontation has greatly exacerbated the situation in the region, so the Russians are not happy that we struck Iran and that Israel struck Iran. And yesterday, a Russian warship escorted several Russian tankers through the English Channel, so Russia is now escorting their tankers when they go near European waters or through European waters because they don't want their tankers to be seized, okay? Europe has been seizing Russian tankers. And Ukraine won't be able to join NATO under Trump, but long-term membership is possible, according to the Finnish president. He said it's realistic to acknowledge that if one of NATO's key members, the U.S., opposes Ukraine's accession at this moment, it simply won't happen in the short or even medium term, however you define that, Finnish President Alexander Stubb said in an interview with CNBC. However, he added that in the long run, NATO membership for Ukraine should remain a possibility. Stubb also stated that Ukraine's accession to the EU will definitely happen and that joining NATO will eventually take place. And the Financial Times, citing Ukrainian intelligence, said that Russia has stockpiled over 13,000 missiles and is now producing up to 200 missiles per month, according to Ukrainian intelligence. And apparently they're no longer dependent on Iran. Domestic missile and drone production is now fully operational. And Russia has increased its production of Iskander missiles thanks to the import of machine tools from China. And the German army started a massive water crossing exercise with the British Army in Germany called Grand Crossings 2025. And Denmark is holding one of its largest military exercises in Greenland this month, deploying a frigate, F-16s, special forces, extra troops, and increased surveillance around critical infrastructure. And the Swedish government has tasked the Swedish Coast Guard with preparing for heavier armament, citing the worsening security situation. Fixed weapons platforms and reinforced gear are being considered to counter threats like drones and improve cooperation with the military. A formal proposal is expected early next year, so the Swedish government wants to arm up their Coast Guard. And the U.S. has expanded military zones on the Mexican border under a new Pentagon order. 2 new military zones are being added to the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona and Texas. As part of a growing web of defense-controlled areas, troops will patrol, detain migrants, and transfer them to Border Patrol. These new sites bring the total to 4, as nearly 9,000 U.S. soldiers remain stationed along the southern border. Following Trump's January directive, crossings have already dropped sharply, but the U.S. military presence is still growing. Wow. And U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio surprised NATO allies this week with conflicting messages on Russia sanctions, delivering a tougher stance in private than in his public remarks. And all 32 NATO member states decided unanimously to raise the minimum required military spending level from 2% to 5% by 2035. And an ammunition depot of the Russian military caught on fire in Siberia for some reason. And I wanted to show you guys some other interesting things here. So here we have satellite imagery from 2021, 4 years ago, showing the construction of these tunnels under this mountain ridge just south of Natanz, literally just a mile south of Natanz. Okay, so we gave Iran over 2 months to prepare. You don't think that they didn't load just a couple hundred pounds of uranium onto a truck and drove that truck into one of these tunnels? Okay, we're talking about just a few hundred pounds of uranium. We're not talking about, millions of pounds or something. It's a very small amount. Okay, you can fit all that on a truck, even a pickup truck, okay, as long as you have proper radiation shielding. And here we have a whole bunch of Russian doomsday planes and VIP planes that were airborne yesterday. One of them went to Belarus. I believe Putin visited Belarus yesterday. And then here we have some interesting activity that happened yesterday over the U.S. We had this AWACS plane flying east to west from Virginia all the way to Kansas, and probably it was looking south towards the Gulf. Okay, and then at the same time we had a nuke sniffer plane flying over Nebraska, Wyoming, Idaho, doing this large east to west pattern, which is very unusual. So clearly they were doing some kind of surveillance here. And then we also had a doomsday plane airborne over Nebraska, a B-52 nuclear bomber, and a recon plane flying north to south looking at the east and west coasts of the U.S. Here we have a Russian communications relay plane for the president of Russia, and it was airborne 2 nights ago when Ukraine launched a massive drone attack on Moscow. So Russia scrambled Putin's communications relay plane up into the air. And then we had this U.S. Navy drone that flew into Egypt, potentially an armed drone, and it turned its tracker off. And then here we have a picture from that big exercise that Germany is doing with the UK, this massive river crossing exercise. Okay, so clearly Europe is preparing for war in the European continent with Russia. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I might be back later on tonight with more breaking news. Please consider joining my Patreon so you can get all these updates without advertisements. Also consider donating to my PayPal. And until the next time, take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.